What prompted you to get into politics? I understand you were in business beforehand.
Yep, no, I am in business. I've been in business for more than 40 years. I had no inclination to get into politics ever until the last 2 years or more, 2.5 years. I just realised that things aren't run in this country like they're supposed to be. It's supposed to be a democracy. We're losing our democratic rights. We're losing our human rights. And I thought, wow, we've just got to stand up to this and try and change things and turn it around.
Okay. So what do you think the three biggest issues of this election for you, if you had to name some of
for
the
me, or
well for the Australia, but from your perspective.
Talking to people, and I think the three biggest issues is one, the mandates, how it's divided our community, how so many thousands of people, tens of thousands of people actually have lost their jobs through mandates, which is totally not right, because at the end of the day, if you are vaccinated, you can still get COVID, so why do the ones that weren't vaccinated have to give up work? So that's, to me, that's, democratic rights just walked out the door. So that's one big issue there is. There's lots of people from all types of careers that have lost their job. Some are struggling. Businesses have gone broke through it. Not just one or two, but lots. Some of those business owners have lost everything, their homes, the lot. I mean, that's not our true Australian values. The other main thing, I think, is our debt. Australia's got a huge debt. Whatever it does, and the government continues to print money, interest rates and inflation are going to go through the roof. That's a very high concern for people across the living. And the third thing is, a lot of people are worried, and I don't blame them, about China are too close and we've let them in the door too much. So that's probably the three main things. There's a heap of other things, but that's the three main ones people talk to me about. The other one, which is probably not as big as those, but is the light rail extension from Broadbeach to Coolangatta. A lot of people are very concerned about that as well.
So, from hearing those answers, I'm very much reminded of sort of the United Australia Party platform. You know, that's very heavy emphasis on the national debt, heavy emphasis on mandates and restrictions, heavy emphasis on the encroachment of China. Where do you see the differences for you, and why people should vote for the One Nation over the UAP?
Well, one thing is UAP have this thing where they want to implement 5 years and strict interest rates to 3%. I don't believe that's possible to do in government, because the banks are their own entity. They can do what they like. Plus the Reserve Bank can do what it likes. You can't govern a Reserve Bank. They're a separate entity, not part of the government. They're an independent body, independent corporation, so you can't force the banks to charge 3%. If the Reserve Bank puts the basic rate up to, say, 2%, and the banks are going to have to charge more than 3% because they can't survive. They've got shareholders and the investors to support, so that won't work. The only way you can do it is stop printing money, cut costs in the government, get more for our resources. We could turn the debt around really quickly, and that will save it. I don't think the fixing interest rates for 5 years, it'd be great if you could, but I don't believe it's possible to do in government. They say all this stuff, but, can you do it? It's all about if you can do it. One Nation can.
So, looking through the party platform, water and its availability to Australians is clearly a big issue. I think it's the top thing when you go onto policies on the One Nation website. And you propose a ban on the sale of water to foreign investors.
I've already sold it to foreign investors, and you can't find out who, because they're not transparent in any way.
So I'm wondering.
They haven't only sold that; they've sold our power. They've sold pretty much. NBN is supposed to be government, but when you look into who owns it, it's not just government.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things we've sold off. We've sold the country off pretty much in the last 20 years.
Yeah. So I'm wondering. So with the proposed ban, One Nation's proposed ban on the sale of water to foreign investors,
Yep.
What do you see as the uniquely negative outcomes of foreign privatisation as opposed to domestic privatisation?
Okay, well,
wouldn't
here's the
it
thing.
be a more...
So while you've got overseas investors, the profits they make go offshore, so they don't reinvest into Australia. One. Two, they pay no tax on it in Australia, so that means we're letting them take money. It's a bit like our gas and a lot of our coal and iron ore. All that money goes offshore. It doesn't actually all come back here, and then there's no tax paid on it in Australia. If we taxed all that out, what it should be, as Australians, we'd pay less tax. Our debt would be way, way, way lower, and it's a whole combination of things that fit into that. But water's one of them for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we haven't built a new dam of any consequence since 1984. That's a long time. Our population's gone from 14, I think, million to 25 million in that time.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not backing up the resources. You know, whole infrastructure in the last 20 years has fallen over compared to the number of people we've got. Have a look at our M1. Like, it's a absolute disaster. I went to Brisbane about 3 Tuesdays ago. I left about 7:30 in the morning. It took me an hour and 45 minutes to get to Springwood. Now, the M1 at Palm Beach, that's in my electorate, right? They've been working on that now for 3 years, and it doesn't look like it'll be done for at least another 2. Now, that should have been put in place 10 years ago, you know. The population's growing so fast, they want to bring in, Liberal National Labour all want to bring in 230 immigrants every year. Now, that might be fine, but we don't have the infrastructure to handle it. It's also driving our house prices up crazily. So our local people can't even afford a house anymore.
Okay. So I'd like to ask you about the policy of citizen-initiated referenda.
I just lost you a bit there.
Yeah. What do you see as some of the outcomes that this sort of policy could bring forward?
Well, I think it'll bring a better lifestyle for Australians, period. You know, the number of resources we have in this country, if we manage them properly, like I've been in business all my life, built successful businesses, and I believe that the country should be run like a business. We've got so much resources and value in this country. If we managed it properly, probably none of us would ever have to pay tax again. That's the sort of resources we have in this country. It's unlimited. But we don't. We sell it all off to overseas, and we get a measly little royalty for what they get. I think it was $56 billion worth of gas went offshore last year. We got $330,000 in royalty for it. That's not much. That's a lot of money. We didn't get paid tax on it either, and the money went to China, or there's a couple of other countries as well, but mainly China. So you see what I'm saying? Like, it's a bit like selling all the kitchenware and trying to make another meal. You can't.
Yeah. I'd like to. You talk a lot about these issues of foreign privatisation, of money going offshore. How big of an issue do you think it is domestically?
I keep losing you.
Yeah. No. I was going to ask a related issue. How big of an issue do you think the domestic
defence
privatisation, like privatisation domestically, into?
I just keep losing you. It might be me. I don't know.
Sorry, I'll get a bit closer. So how big of an issue do you think is the domestic tax evasion or domestic or avoidance, I should say, or domestic wealth inequality when you have people like Gina Rinehart or Clive Palmer? Do you think that it is as big of an issue that wealth is being hoarded by these people as it is going offshore?
Well, I don't know exactly how much those two people you mentioned have offshore. Clive Palmer is UAP, and he's saying that he wants freedom and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, Clive's who he is, and sometimes I think he's a bit of a hypocrite. But I'm not here to bag anybody. I don't believe in that, but I just think that the whole. So as far as so you're talking about offshore money? Is that what you mean?
No. I'm talking about you say how kind of wealth is being gate-kept by foreign investors and such, like so that Australians never see any of it.
Yeah.
So how much of an issue do you think it is that domestic Australians perhaps?
Well, it's no issue if you're happy to be going down and put reduce your value of living or the conditions that we live in. If you're happy to accept less and less and less, well, there's no problem. But see, I'm not like that. I think that Australians deserve much better. This is Australia. It's our own country.
Yeah.
We basically could be totally self-sufficient. In fact, we were in the 50s and 60s.
Okay. I'd like to ask you, on your website, on your profile on the One Nation website, you talk about decisions being made based on, quote, political correctness and not what Australians actually want. Can you provide any specific examples of this?
Just off the top of my head, you've probably got me there, but we tend to jump to things that small lobby groups want, which is not really the main part of the population. Like the population doesn't want all that stuff. What about transgender and things like that? Like I can tell you from talking to people, they're not that big on all that stuff. You know what I mean? So I think it's.
Are you talking about civil rights protections for transgender people? Is that the sort of?
Well, not civil rights. I think civil rights are good for anybody, but we shouldn't be pushing it in our schools, and it shouldn't be making the headlines like it does. I don't believe.
Okay.
And people make decisions on that. Our government make decisions on things that are probably more politically correct than what the people want, and it's not so much what the people want either, but what the country wants. Some people are very narrow-minded and want little things, but it doesn't suit the general population. Don't you think you're better to make decisions made on what the majority of the population want than the minority? Do you think that? I'm a learner too. I'm happy to learn things. I don't know everything, and I don't profess to.
I'm a bit. I would say I'm probably a bit more progressive than the average person. But I mean, the young people generally are. If you look at the demographic, so I'm trying to keep my personal affiliation out of this little project. Yeah. So I'd like to ask about some concerning statements. I found them somewhat concerning on your website regarding climate change. Your website claims that the evidence on which man-made global warming rests is compromised, and I'm wondering why you believe this when man-made climate change is a conclusion held by 97% of climatologists.
Yep. Well,
what's your view on the issue?
But the problem is they can't predict the weather tomorrow, let alone predict climate change. Now, I'm going to tell you this. My dad's 101. He's as sharp as a tack mentally. He's a bit dottery physically. He's a bit weaker. But he said to me, Kevin, this climate change, he said, it's a whole lot of BS. He said, I'm going to tell you right now, he said, back in the 50s and the 40s, he said, we had a lot hotter days and for longer and a lot wetter days for longer than we do today. So he said, it's not human climate change because we've got a lot more people here today than what we had then.
Uh-huh.
Now, that's from an old man who has a perspective on reality. However, environment and climate change are different. I honestly believe we need create a fantastic environment, and so many people talk about things, but they never do anything about it. And as far as you want to go back to climate change, they're talking about having net zero carbon. Do you know that you breathe out carbon, and all our plants need carbon, and to have that, we won't be here. We'll be dead.
Yeah. I'd like to.
Plans for like the Greens and things like that will just drive businesses broke. It will destroy our real economy,
Well,
and it'll do no good at all. And it's not realistic.
So, do you think that? So we're seeing more and more like international resolutions to move off of coal, to move off of fossil fuels and stuff, and into more renewable energy. And regardless of the belief in the belief that climate change is a huge issue, are you concerned with Australia being left behind as these global powers make these sort of resolutions to move off of coal and make certain alliances conditional on the absence of coal?
Well, we're way in front of lots of them anyway. We're way in front of the US, we're way in front of China, we're way in front of Brazil, and we're way in front of India. If you can get those to do what like the Greens want, well, that will be just about impossible, because they're going to keep using coal for a long time, I just about bet. You know, they have high industry, high levels of power use, and, you know, to say turn it into solar or wind would be just about unviable for them. The problem with those two things, they've got lots of issues as well.
So
I'm not scared Australia's going to fall behind, because we're way in front of most of them anyway.
So I'd like to ask finally, before you can just kind of, if you wanted to talk about anything else, I'd like to ask about kind of the issue that historically pre-pandemic kind of characterized One Nation in the minds of like the average Australian, and it's the issue of immigration. I would say it's fair to say that before the pandemic, that was what people. Yeah, that was what people thought when they thought One Nation.
Well, look.
So
One Nation is not as the media purport it to be. That's the worst bit, because the media want to keep putting them down, and you can check that out. It's not hard to find. So, One Nation is not against immigration, but they believe if people immigrate here, they must be able to fit in with our society. Not be separated and create their own little villages, I would call those. Not villages, but you know what I mean. Because it's no good having people coming here if they're just coming here for a free ride. We need people. I did an interview on Saturday with a guy he calls himself Johnny on the Spot. And he's an immigrant himself. And he said, you know, when we come here, my mum and dad had to work. He said, and you know what, it did create fantastic culture, and that's what we need as immigrants. Now, he's an immigrant, and that's his perspective, and I thought he's so spot on. And that's what we'll be. So we're not against it, but we need to have infrastructure to handle the amount of immigrants. And so obviously the media put One Nation down, as you know, they don't want immigration and all this stuff, but that's just, it's a bit like racist. You know, they try and purport Pauline Hanson as racist. She's not racist at all. She'd be the most, I don't know what the word I want, she'd be the most compatible person with other races that you'll ever see. It was just how they purported her. Some of the things she said in the beginning, people took a bit the wrong way. And she's no more racist than I am, and I'm not racist. My partner's Asian, so I'm definitely not racist, and nor is she. But people still think she is, because the media want to report the wrong stuff, because they're there for the two major parties. And here's the other issue with all of that, is the federal government has given all the media of Australia 2 years tax exemption, providing they report the narrative. Now, that's a democratic society. I don't know what is.
So, you say that you just want the infrastructure necessary to intake
Well, let me ask you this
immigrants.
question. Like, you're a smart young man, and I can tell that. So let's say they want to bring in 230,000 or 220,000 immigrants a year. First of all, where are they going to live? We're already struggling for houses now. People are paying, house prices have gone up more than 25% in the last year and a half. What about food? What about transport? Getting them to and from jobs for them are going to take our Australian people's jobs. I was at the candidates breakfast last Thursday week at the casino. The LNP member got up. He was asked about this, and he said, since COVID, we've brought in 630,000 visaed workers. So those visaed workers are here to take our jobs. Is that what we want? We're Australians. Is that what we want?
So I'd like to ask the conventional economic theory around this is essentially that sure, immigrants will decrease the supply of jobs, but they will increase the demand for jobs because these immigrants also need to pay for things, and so the conventional, all of the studies that I've seen on it seem to suggest that immigrants can be a net benefit to the economy over, I think it's a couple years, I believe.
So let me answer this question. What you say is partially true. I believe that. However, those 630,000 they've brought in since COVID are taking the places of our nurses, teachers, pilots, all those people who lost their job through mandates. Is that the right thing to do as an Australian, for your Australian government? Do you think that's the right thing to do for your Australian population or not?
Well, how about this?
Question. It's a yes or a no.
Yeah.
You can answer me if you wish. If you don't, I know you don't understand.
I can understand where you're coming from. I definitely see your perspective.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
I mean, see, One Nation's about, government by the people, for the people, not government like we have, where they govern for the big corporate mates or buddies.
Yeah. Alright, so you talk about...
That's what democracy's about.
Yeah. You talk about 600,000 migrants, which is a lot of migrants, and a lot of these...
That's not my number, he said it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah, and a lot of these jobs, a lot of these migrants aren't refugees, for sure. I think we only have, the Greens want to raise the refugee cap to 50,000, so there's, nowhere near this number of refugees. However, One Nation can I finish the question, please? Yeah. One Nation still proposes, though, turning the boats back and withdrawing from the 1951 UN Refugee Convention, and the only reason provided on the website is the exorbitant cost of detention centre operation, but that doesn't necessarily mean we should turn the boats away. Why should we take this action as opposed to letting some of them in?
That's the problem. A lot of the refugees pay money to get on those boats to come here. They're not true refugees, and there's a big difference. If you can afford to pay $30,000 each to get on a boat to get here, you're not what I call a refugee. Do you agree?
Well, I believe it was the University of New South Wales that said, I believe, over 90% of those currently on detention centres would be considered true refugees under international law, especially when you're considering people in Myanmar, where the Rohingya Muslims are being genocided by the military dictatorship. I would probably call them refugees, even if they did manage to scrounge up the money to be able to get a boat passage.
Are you there?
Yeah. I'd just like I'm just curious as why should we take this action to turn the boats away? When because my impulse.
But you just told me, you asked me what I thought, and I told you.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have a different opinion, and you're entitled to it because you know that's part of free speech.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can move on. So the so the One Nation website says that migrants would only be allowed from culturally cohesive countries. Could you just explain what that means for me, thanks?
Say that again. What does it say?
The One Nation website states that migrants would only be allowed from there's an exact quote, culturally cohesive countries. Can you just explain what that means for me?
So what they want is people who are here to fill the void of things we don't have. It might be doctors, it might be chiropractors, it might be whatever. So people who can come here and be productive in this country because that's what we want. That's the sort of immigrants we want. Do you not agree?
Yeah, definitely, I agree with that. I'm just so that isn't necessarily locationally specific, is it not?
No, not locationally specific.
Okay. Was there anything else you wanted me to include in the video? Anything else you had to say?
You can say that my name's Kevin Hargraves, and I'm here standing in this election to fight for the people of McPherson because they need someone who will stand up for them, and that would be my role.
Okay. I'll put that at the end. Sorry, I'll edit it differently. I'll put that bit at the end. But I did have one last question, and it's about I think a lot of people, and I think this is what holds a lot of people back from voting One Nation, if I'm going to be honest, and it's kind of a stereotyping, I guess, of the party. Because would you agree that to a lot of people who aren't too involved in politics, and a lot of people who are, the sort of impulse with One Nation is, oh, that's the racist party. Like you said, that the media will say that that's racist, etc.
I'd like to guarantee you that One Nation is not racist in any way whatsoever.
Yeah.
In fact, the media painted Pauline really racist way back when she went in dressed in Parliament and she went in to say that, it doesn't matter what race you are, you should have the same rights as Australia. But they twisted it around and turned it around like they do. Just a week ago, the media came out and said One Nation was given its preferences to Liberals. Not a week later, they came out and said they were giving their preferences to Labor. Now, they're doing all that just to stir things up. So it's the same with the racism thing. Like, it's just crazy stuff. But that's what we have to put up with a media who doesn't like to report the truth.
So do you stand by the when Pauline Hanson went into Parliament dressed in a burqa?
She did it to show people. She did it to denigrate that. She did it to show people it didn't matter whether that was your background or your race. Australians should assimilate with everybody. It's about being together. It's about, under mandates, we've divided our community so much it's bad. Now, we're not about that. It's about assimilating people and having a community that fits in with everybody. So it doesn't matter what race you are. It's just how they told the story. They're there to sell newspapers and ads on television,
Yeah, I'm just okay. I definitely see your perspective.
I've definitely answered the question, and I think it was pretty clear.
Yeah, you were. Okay. Thank you very much for talking with me.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Okay. Good luck in the coming election.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brayden. I appreciate your call.
Thank you. I appreciate you answering.
People showing an interest in politics. We need more to show interest and they need to read through the false news, I'll call it. Or, I mean, I'm not specific, because a lot of it is not real, and so they need to be able to read through that to get the true story of what's happening in this country.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.